Good evening. It's a little after 7 o'clock, so I think we're going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, and it's Tuesday evening, September 16th. We will call this to order and maybe start with a roll call from Fahmy of who's present on the commission tonight.
Brandon Bowersox Johnson.
Present.
Carrie Brown Tess.
Present.
Michelle Guerra. Cynthia Hoyle. Audrey Ishii.
Present.
Susan Jones.
Present.
Nadine Schmitz.
Present.
Craig Schonkweiler.
Present.
And Roland White here as a proxy for U of I.
Okay, great. And Roland, I don't know, do you want to briefly introduce yourself and tell us where you're from?
Sure. My name is Roland White, and I work at the University of Illinois in the Engineering and Transportation Services section, and I'm just sitting in for Stacy DiLorenzo this evening.
Great, and we'll, at some point, we'll get the official letters or correspondence so that you could become the official university representative here on the commission. So welcome, and good to meet you. We also have a few other staff and member of the public present. We will dive right in, and we do have time for public input if anybody wants to speak. First tonight, we do have a quorum, so we'll proceed, and we have an agenda that has 2 business items on it. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Okay, by Carrie, seconded by Sue. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we will proceed. Next up, minutes from the previous meeting were distributed. There was a 2-page copy of minutes from the previous meeting in May that was sent out, and they looked good to me. Does anyone have any corrections to them or a motion to approve?
Minutes from.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, a motion by Audrey, seconded by Craig. Any other corrections or comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. Then next up tonight we have public input, as we always do at these public meetings. Is there anybody here in the audience from the public who came to speak to the commission this evening? No? Okay. A few familiar faces out there, but we will go ahead then with our business items tonight. Under new business, the first item that we have is the Urbana Climate Action Plan, and one of the staff members, Scott Tess, who was hugely involved in its creation, is here to maybe tell us about it. I know there was also an entire copy of a draft report in the packet, so hopefully everybody had a chance to review that, and we can first hear from Scott and then take questions and commentary on any part of the plan. As the memo said, certainly the bike and transportation and pedestrian stuff is relevant, but he's open to feedback on any of it. So good evening, Scott. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission. My name again is Scott Tess. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Manager for the city, and I want to share briefly a few slides about our second phase climate action plan with you, and then maybe zero in on some particular actions that might be of particular concern to you. So, getting right into it, this plan document, just a little background first. This comes from is stimulated by our first phase of our climate action plan, which was passed by Council in 2012. That plan sets goals and actions for a 2-year period, which ends at the end of this calendar year. Starting next year, we will be implementing a second phase of this climate action plan, and that's what we're sharing with you tonight. The first phase created goals to reduce greenhouse gases 25% by 2020 and 80% by 2050. It set out some research and public comment goals in this first 2-year period, and it was sort of a preliminary phase that would prepare us for a longer phase that will take us through to 2020 and our first milestone, again, that 25% reduction by 2020. This document includes a listing of our accomplishments in Phase 1, a review of renewable energy credits. That's something that Council has been very interested in and discussed several times at Council. We have an excerpt from a US EPA document up front in the document, in our document, and we have a annotated bibliography in the appendix if you're interested in doing some more research on that issue. We review our 2007 and 2013 greenhouse gas inventories in this document, and then we discuss two types of strategies. One are bigger impact and nearer term strategies. The second is smaller impact and or longer term strategies, more on the policy side. A few acronyms before we get started. GHG is greenhouse gases. MT or MTCO2E is metric tons of carbon dioxide. I will try and keep the acronyms to a minimum. This is a two-slide big list of all of our accomplishments. This is a copy and paste from the document. I've bolded just a few items that might be of particular interest to this commission, including nearly 12 miles of bicycle infrastructure installed, lots of activities around and staff participation around Bike to Work Day. We also created a bike station where two bike stations where we have bike share for city employees. These were bikes that were impounded by the police department. They were abandoned, stolen, what have you. And at a certain point, they become unclaimed property. The police department typically has a giveaway, and it's a very popular event. But they gave us several bikes, and we've set them up with helmets and locks so that city staff can go from building to building, meeting to meeting without having to take a city car. So I mentioned that we have these two big milestones, big goals in our original climate action plan. 25% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2020 is our first milestone. That's graphically shown at the bottom there. The red bar is our 2007 greenhouse gas inventory. So that's metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. The blue bar, if you take the dark blue and the light blue together, is our projection of how much greenhouse gases we would have in a business as usual case by 2020. Now you'll notice that it's just barely a little more than 2007. The same graphic in our original 2012 Climate Action Plan was very different. It showed a much higher greenhouse gas inventory in 2020. The difference between then and now is that we have a new modeling tool from the association that we're a member of. And that tool allows us to incorporate the state of Illinois' renewable portfolio standard in our projections. So this is our greenhouse gas emissions inventory projection for 2020, given that the renewable portfolio standard will continue, it's in the law, until 2020. I expect it to. So that's the reason that our 2007 and 2020 numbers are fairly close. Now, again, I mentioned our reduction goal is 25% reduction. That is represented by the light blue segment of the top bar. This is where we're at based on our 2007 baseline up into our 2013 re-inventory. We have a 10% reduction. That is including the effect of the renewable portfolio standard and including the effect of the renewable energy credits that we buy as a part of our municipal electric aggregation program. That 10%, majority of that 10% is achieved by the purchase of renewable energy credits. This is another display. It shows our 2013 inventory at the beginning on the left hand of that chart. The orange line at the top is our projection till 2020. So like I said in the other graphic, a slight increase. The decline that you see from 2013 is the model's representation of the effect of our renewable energy credit purchases. So it starts that graphic presuming no policy interventions to reduce our greenhouse gases. Then it applies our renewable energy credits, and that's the decrease you see. Now there are these different colored bars represent different segments or sectors of our greenhouse gas emissions. The renewable energy credits cover our electricity consumption in the residential sector. So you see that section of this graph is the section that is reduced from 2013 and then throughout to 2020. The graph is presuming that we will continue to buy renewable energy credits through to 2020. You will also notice that there is a very thin red bar that is representing the greenhouse gas emissions that are a consequence of our solid waste generation. And you'll notice that is an extremely thin section of our total inventory. That's really important to see graphically, because it tells us that even if we, say, reduced our greenhouse gases from solid waste by half, it still would account for very little in terms of our total greenhouse gas emissions. So I had told you that we have achieved a 10% reduction in our greenhouse gases from 2007 to 2013. That doesn't mean a lot to most people because it's really out of context. Is 10% good or is 10% bad? We went through and compared ourselves in terms of goals, goal setting in our 2012 Climate Action Plan. We've updated that comparison here. So in the left column, you have the city listings. The middle column, the original greenhouse gas reduction goals that all of these cities set. And then in the right column, the most recent progress update that all of these cities have posted. And you'll see that we're actually doing quite well compared to all these other cities we've been comparing ourselves to. You'll notice that Salt Lake City has set a very high goal, but hasn't done an inventory to see where they are currently. You'll see that Kansas City, Missouri set a goal, but hasn't been able to finance. They're saying they need $80,000 to conduct a new inventory. Also note that the baselines for all of these different cities are not all the same year. So it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison. But creating a greenhouse gas inventory is an enormous data collection endeavor and a modeling endeavor. So at this point, there's no one doing it every year. You can see some cities have done it once and never again. We hope to do this every 2 years here on out. So this is a screenshot of the modeling software, and I'm showing this to explain that it does two things for us. One, it models or inventories our greenhouse gas emissions, and two, it allows us to model certain greenhouse gas mitigation strategies or reduction strategies, and it shows us what the impact of those different strategies would be on our inventory. So what I've done here is modeled and shown you graphically 3 different strategies, and I've scaled those strategies to achieve a 25% reduction in greenhouse gases. Now the number that we're shooting for in terms of a 25% reduction is 404,000 metric tons. So you'll see on the left-hand side of that graph, there's a 400K. We're shooting for 404K. And the 3 strategies that we've modeled that could, in a reasonable scale, a scale that we reasonably could implement, that could achieve our 25% reduction are to continue to purchase renewable energy credits, to restart the home energy performance program that we ran years ago with federal stimulus dollars, and to run that every year through 2020. And then an additional 25% reduction of greenhouse gases in the commercial sector. It's those are 3 strategies that together could achieve a 25% reduction. Other strategies could be added or supplanted in here. But these 3 are examples of what adds up. So I'm going to go through all of our goal areas very briefly. I'm not going to read every one of these. I'm just going to summarize them for you. The first 3 here are policy goals. They help set us on a long-term course to be more energy efficient in our buildings. The 4th goal is a strategy to engage with the utility company to help facilitate data access for commercial buildings. The fifth goal is to seek funding to recapitalize that home energy performance program that we ran years ago, and it was very successful. I'm skipping, you'll notice I'm skipping goal area 2 because that's one that's of particular concern, I think, to this commission. I'll hit that one at the end. Number 3, we have some strategies to reduce, or to increase renewable energy purchasing and installation. We want to continue to purchase renewable energy credits for municipal electric aggregation, purchase renewable energy credits for city consumption, and or install on-site renewables for city consumption. Propose strategies to improve the local on-site market. There's a lot of support from the Department of Energy for improving your local renewable energy market. And then focus on engaging the commercial sector in more renewable energy purchasing or renewable energy credits. Next section, we've had this since the beginning in our first plan. We have lots of mitigation strategies, but we also want to adapt to climate change impacts. And so the first goal is to engage with the Illinois State Water Survey to reevaluate what a 100-year storm is. If climate change means that the 100-year storm is going to be bigger or faster or different in some measure, we want to change our development standards to accommodate that new reality. Second, we want to actually the next 3 goals are very arbor division focused, and we want to make sure that our tree canopy is going to be able to adapt and continue to thrive through a changing economy. And we have a couple of strategies there. And then the action 3 is a little bit different. With changing climate, there are species that are having trouble adapting. A really important set of species are pollinators. Most of our food is produced with the help of pollinators, and so it's important that we create habitats that encourage their development and keep them pollinating. Next section is a section of partnerships. When you're in a financially constrained environment, it's really important to leverage existing resources that are out there to make the biggest impact for the least amount of dollars, and that's what this entire section is focused on. And the last section here by number is just to continue to work with the Sustainability Advisory Commission to update our inventory, check in on the status of our goals, and then create a third phase of this plan in 2020 to get us through to 2050, our 2050 goal of an 80% reduction. Now, getting to the section I skipped that I thought might be of particular interest, this section is focusing on emissions from transportation or gasoline consumption. And the first goal is to take a look at green development standards such as LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, for neighborhood development. That's the newest of their suite of green building standards. Instead of looking at just the environmental impacts and environmental benefits from an individual building, LEED-ND looks at creating an entire development that is a lower environmental impact. So what we want to do is take a look at that and see where we can grab some of their standards and pull them into our own zoning and development rules and codes. The next 2 actions have specific percentage numbers next to them, but we put these in just to get the ball rolling, and we really want to get some feedback from this commission as to what types of goals and at what level we should be setting them. So the second action is to reduce single occupancy vehicle mode share from 47%, I think that's the 2010 census number, to 40%. Again, the 40% is just a round number. I'm hoping to talk with you all today about whether, is that realistic? Is it too small? Is it too big? What's a good number? Action 3 is evaluate progress of bicycle master plan goal to increase bicycle mode share to 12%. Now, those are very similar goals. One is saying let's bring single occupancy vehicle down. The other is saying let's bring bike up. There are other modes like PED, bus, carpool, which are also very good from a greenhouse gas standpoint. But these are the goals that the Sustainability Advisory Commission really keyed on. And I think that's my last slide. With that, I'd open it up for some discussion, and I'd love to have your input on any of these, but particularly this page here.
Okay, great, thanks. And just to sort of recap, those key questions are what types, especially with these goals, what types of goals should we have and what level, like the 40% number is appropriate. But feedback on anything is fine. So first off, any questions from members? Audrey?
So is that number indicate with your models that would have a big impact on the metric tons of CO2?
That I have not modeled that reduction of impact. If we go back, if you take a look at the percentages we're talking about, say a 7 percentage point decrease in single occupancy vehicle, and you look at this section that is transportation, it's a significant section, but it's certainly not. It's the third largest. So I don't have an immediate model for that. And the model is set up so that it's possible I could do a user-defined intervention, but I can't just put in, hey, what would happen if I reduced this 7 percentage points? We'd have to figure out some math outside of the model and then kind of put it in. But I don't have a good sense of the scale is the answer.
I have a question.
Carrie, yeah.
So a couple things. Could you go back to the slide with the graph? Yep, here. Okay, so quick clarifying question. The transportation and mobile sources, is that specifically our cars, people who live here in Urbana, not people driving on the highway and what have you? Like, is this just us?
That total number that we put into our model comes from another model that is run by the Regional Planning Commission.
So it's like how many highways you have versus how many people you have?
There's a lot of factors in the model. I don't know it precisely, but it's going to be population, the typical type of cars that are being driven in the place at the time. So the same number of say vehicle miles traveled today with a different set of cars 10 years ago that didn't have as good a fuel economy would lead to a different number. But it is just a transportation model just for City of Urbana, though.
And a follow-up?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about two possible wins, like what Audrey was saying about how this might affect it. If, let's say, 40% of our citizens, an increase of 40% of our citizens decided to ride bikes and that was somehow documented, would we see any change in that?
Good question. What's in our 2013 inventory here is actually transportation model output from 2 years ago. RPC has not produced an updated model for this most recent year. And so what we've done is just carried forward those numbers for another year. So to your question, would we, if we achieve some percent reduction or improvement in our mode share, would it show up? It would show up in our model if it shows up in their model, and that's if they have the ability to run the model in the particular year we're interested in.
And a super follow-up?
Yeah.
So what about like economic changes that our community makes? Like if we increase the amount of people who are buying local and reducing the amount of transportation that was happening on a like nationwide or global scale, does that affect our carbon emissions? Or is that even trackable?
It's an enormously complex question. There are some studies that have looked at, they've actually segmented individual food products, and they find that different food products have a different transportation footprint, not only in the absolute vehicle miles traveled, but in the proportion of, that is, what proportion of their greenhouse gas footprint comes from transportation compared to production. So an anecdote, there was a study that looked at lamb production, lamb consumption in England, and they compared lamb that was grown in England and shipped only within England and then consumed in England. And they compared that to lamb production in New Zealand. So it was grown in New Zealand, shipped to England, and consumed in England. And they found that the lamb that made it all the way from New Zealand had a smaller carbon footprint than the lamb that was grown in England. How can that be? It's all those food miles, as they're called. Well, it turns out that in New Zealand, the lamb are pasture fed, and the farms are run on solar and wind power. And in England, that was not the case. And so you also have to consider they're not sending one little boat over for a package of lamb. It goes in an enormous cargo container on an enormous cargo ship. And so when you add all of that up, the New Zealand lamb was a better environmental choice than the English lamb. So it's an enormously complex question, and one that we're probably not able to model with that sort of precision.
Excuse me one second. I'm sorry, I have to step out again real quick. But Sue, can you maybe take over and keep calling on people while I'm out for a minute?
Sorry.
Okay, go right ahead. Excuse me.
How does commercial energy compare to industrial energy? It seems to overwhelm these numbers, and it looks like a source of I know this is getting off the BPAC.
No, that's totally fine.
But I'm wondering what commercial energy is.
This is a good question. So all the gas and electric, natural gas and electric consumption data that we have for this model comes from Ameren. And they gave us data originally in 2007 for 2007, and then we asked again for all the 2007 as well as all the intervening years to 2013. And we noticed that from the first time that they gave us data to this most current data set they provided, the relative proportions of commercial and industrial changed quite a bit. It's not because there were significant changes in the city. It's because how they queried their database or how they classified commercial versus industrial changed. That's just one of the vagaries of getting your data from someone else. So they should be classified in terms of how the utility company classifies them, in industrial versus commercial.
So would commercial be largely lighting, heating, and cooling, or as opposed to production then?
So if you take, so this is a commercial building. We're not selling things. It's a government office, but it's a commercial building to Ameren versus, a warehouse on North Lincoln is going to be classified as industrial. In both instances, some of that electricity is lighting, but it's more of the type of use in the building.
Scott, for action 3 there, increasing the bicycle mode share to 12%, that was from the original bicycle master plan, is that correct?
Yes, I think that's
Okay.
a number that was provided to us.
Okay. We're still in the draft process for the new update,
Mm-hmm.
and the draft has not been officially released yet for review, but in steering committee meetings, I'm understanding that there is not going to be a new bicycle mode share goal,
Okay.
perhaps. It's still yet to be determined, but the Regional Plan Commission was leaning to not establish a specific goal. So, perhaps action 3 instead of 12% could be to basically, continual increase of bicycle mode share. A little bit more vague, but it's supporting the increase of bicycle mode share, but not to a specific number.
Do they have numbers of where we're at?
We do, there is a draft pedestrian and bicycle study called a PAVS report that's in draft form, and they do have that where they went out and determined. And I actually think that right now we're above 12% on bicycle mode share. So I guess we could leave it and we would have immediate success. That's one way to look at it. But we probably should revisit that. Either with a new number, or we strike the number and we want to just increase bicycle mode share, or by a percentage, a percent increase that's relative to whatever number comes out.
Yeah. Some perspective is really important here. Our mode share is really good in the city by comparison. If you look at Portland's bicycle shares, like 7 or 8%, 9%, and they're an example of a bicycle-friendly city. I think if you look at the top 50, the largest 50 municipalities in the country, if you look at their single occupancy vehicle mode share, there's only 3 or 4 that have a lower single occupancy vehicle mode share than us, and they all have light rail or subways. So, when we talk about starting from where we're at now and making it even better, we should see it as very difficult. We've taken all the low-hanging fruit. We're already in the lead. So it's how much more can we lead by?
And as a follow-up, so this would be for the next 5-year period, from
Correct.
2015 to 20. So another approach would be, instead of saying 12, you just say increase bicycle mode share by X%.
Yeah, instead of 2X% by
Right.
X%.
By X%. And yet, at the same time, we don't know exactly what benefit that brings.
Yeah, from the model.
Well, we
From
know
the
it
model.
brings a benefit. Whether
Right.
it shows up in the data is a different
Right.
different matter.
Okay.
There's the nature of this is, there's no meter we can hold in the sky and get our greenhouse gas emissions.
Mhm.
It's all models, and it's many different models all put together. So,
Mhm. So the point being that if you increase, if you eliminate the use of a vehicle and you are using a bicycle, it's just a bonus. I mean, it's a better thing than to go the other way.
Sure.
So I would propose on action number 3, maybe we increase it by a estimated percentage, whether that be, 1% per year would be 5% over the 5-year period. That could be one approach, And then it makes it relative to wherever we're at, what baseline we're at,
Right.
too.
Audrey?
Do we have a pedestrian mode share?
We do from that study, the draft study, but it's not been released. But it is fairly high compared to the bicycle mode share. I don't have the exact number with me, but
And that brings up a question in this document. I mean, we may not want to be as specific as, say, you all are in your own, bicycle master plan type documents. But in this document, do we really want to split up and have separate goals for every individual mode share? Or do we want to simplify it into one? Here it's 2, but maybe even one, bicycle and pedestrian oriented goal.
Sue?
I would think it would be good to have some separation so that it's not just, that other weird stuff. And there are lots of fundamental differences between the pedestrian and the bicycling.
One other thought, I like Craig's idea about sort of making it more relative, but a whole nother thought along these lines is that we, in addition to changing mode share, we may want to consider action items that make the mode more efficient. Like an example would be a recommendation to kind of stay on top of electric charging station infrastructure for electric cars or something. That would be the sort of recommendation that wouldn't be changing mode share at all. I mean, people could still be driving, but it would make the segment of those vehicles being driven more efficient and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I don't know how that fits in here either, but that seems like a whole different thing than what we're trying to achieve with bike and ped planning that actually shifts the mode.
I've looked at that, electric cars in particular. A couple of points.
Yeah.
Electric cars, as an individual car, has a great improvement in terms of greenhouse gases, as long as we're still buying renewable energy credits, because then the electricity you're putting into your car is covered by renewable energy credits. If the situation changes and we're not, then the benefit is something like one-third reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. It's not zero, because what you're actually doing with electric cars, you're putting grid power, take that all the way back to where it's generated. In our grid, it's mostly coal. A lot of nuclear, but mostly coal. So it's better than gasoline in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, but it's not zero. It is, in terms of our accounting, it is zero insofar as we are buying renewable energy credits. Also, I attempted, the model is a little narrowly constructed, but I attempted to model the impact of electric cars. And what it looks like is we would, in order to have an appreciable impact, we would have to have hundreds of new electric cars a year to have a measurable or appreciable impact on that sector. Last point on charging stations. Most people who have electric cars charge them like they charge their mobile phone. They come home, plug it in overnight, get up in the morning, it's fully charged. It works out quite well because something like 92% of American commutes are 40 miles or less. And every electric car gets about 50 miles to the charge. So what you do is you drive all day, come home, charge all night, drive all day, charge all night. So if there's a charging station at your workplace or your Starbucks, you'll plug in because somebody else is paying for your fuel. But you don't need to plug in. That is, that charging station does not enable an additional person to buy an electric car who couldn't before. Now, there are some scenarios, and I'm working with the RPC. They had some staff turnover, so we haven't finished the project. But we're working with them to identify what type of commutes actually would be enabled to be electrified. And what I think those commutes are is out-of-town commutes, people who are 20 to 25 miles away, so their round-trip commute is more than one electric vehicle charge. Now, that also brings up the importance of where the charging station is. So say a person lives in Danville and commutes to one of the hospitals on University. They can't make it round trip in a Nissan Leaf. But if you do what every city is doing right now, which is putting their electric vehicle charging stations in their downtown redevelopment, economic development zones, well, is someone going to drive from Danville, park on Main Street, and then walk to Presidents or Carl, or take the bus to Presidents and Carl, and then back? They're not going to do it. They're just not going to. No one's going to do that. They're not going to have an additional mode and transfer that extra leg. So what I imagine the effective place to actually enable in new trips to be electrified is long distance commuters who can charge at their workplace. So I'm trying to narrow down that area where it really has an impact.
Yep. No, that totally makes sense. I appreciate that. So maybe getting back to these questions of just the mode shift numbers and goals. Sue's feedback kind of was maybe keep them separate. It's nice to have numbers for each separately and not try to merge them all into something that ends up making them kind of lose their impact.
I don't show it here, but on the document, which you might have on your computer or paper in front of you, there are bullet points under a lot of these different action items that in some instances, they're explanatory. In other instances, they're suggestive of some implementation. These actions here really don't have specific implementations that go with them. There's a little bit more in the document, but that's also something that I would be definitely open to hearing your input on.
Yeah, and for people who have the PDF, it looks like it's page 24 of the PDF has just a few bullet points for action item 2 about the single occupancy vehicle mode share. The bullet point just says evaluate strategies to increase pedestrian, bike, carpool, and bus mode share. And under action item 3, which is about the bike master plan, the bullet point says implement recommendations from the bike master plan to achieve the next level of bike-friendly community. So it gives a little more information there.
Yeah, there are articles all the time about different things different cities are doing toward these type of goals. But those are things that are doing, they're not necessarily things that are working. And so if you all, being more ensconced in these topics than I am, have more insight on what strategies have an impact and can scale to the kind of resources we have available, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah. So, Sue.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly what you said about implementation because, okay, reducing single occupancy vehicle mode share, what does that mean? Are we going to talk about working with the infrastructure, working with the zoning so we have more grocery stores that are really accessible with pedestrian and bicycle and that kind of thing? And those would be the kind of things I think should be at least, even Action 1 talks about looking at zoning and development codes. Well, that might be a thing, zoning and development codes to, reduce the single occupancy vehicle mode share.
Yeah, there's an interplay between all, that first goal and the next two.
Yeah. I'd suggest maybe one more concrete thing to add under action 2, and maybe this is just as one of the bullet points, but would be to actually, proceed with pedestrian planning efforts, because there are some underway,
Right.
and set goals for pedestrian improvements and pedestrian mode share. Because right now we don't, around PEDs, we don't have a completed, PED master plan, but we also don't have a sense of goals.
Right. Something that's absent here that comes to mind that maybe we should put in is just what you're saying. We're doing a lot of things. Well, we've been doing things for years with bicycle infrastructure. That's going to contribute, that has contributed and will continue to contribute to these goals. And that should maybe be brought out in a statement such as continue to implement. And then there's a pedestrian infrastructure study going on right now. It just started. So those are, some of the strategies that the impact might be uncertain, but, it seems to be the best part of the best practices that we want to put in here, I think.
Yeah. I take it a step further and say, a good measure too would be to say that we would need, or there would be a recommendation, maybe even out of this plan, for a pedestrian master plan. At least then that is one more document that pushes it forward.
Yeah. One additional bullet point. This is just a suggestion, so take it or leave it, but one additional bullet point you might consider would be adding some note about working with our partners on campus to implement university bike plans and university ped improvements. The fact that so many of our trips in Urbana are trips where the destination is campus means that we really can't do it alone. And I know on campus funding is limited. I know it's hard to make some of these improvements, but they have started bike planning. There have been improvements starting to get incrementally made, but I think the fact that so many of the trips going through our neighborhoods are people really with their destination of campus means that we need to be acknowledging that, that they would be at the table in implementing things. So just a bullet point to recommend working with our partners on their implementation as well.
Sure.
Carrie?
Do we have any data on like percentage of growth of people who are riding bikes or walking versus driving?
With the study I was saying, where they evaluated the bicycle and pedestrian, we have now a baseline that they're trying to establish, but we don't have anything prior to that. So we can determine from the study, it looks like the mode share, basically the percentage of people bicycling, the percentage of people walking, but we can't necessarily surmise the growth, particularly since the bicycle master plan's been implemented, because there was no baseline established.
There's census data, but that's
Right.
collected in a different manner, so
Right.
it's not exactly apples to apples
But
when you compare it to RBC.
that's the best data we probably have, yeah.
And there's census every 10 years, which is, good, and then there's 2 and 3 year estimates between that, which is less useful. The other problem with the census data is the bicycle share. That category is actually bicycle, taxi cab, and motorcycle all in one category. So it's not real precise.
So Scott, how does, we've made some general recommendations.
Mhm.
Where does it go from here then?
The next stop will be Plan Commission.
Okay.
This is open for public comment. We have a link on our website for folks to make public comment, and I'd encourage you all to do that individually as well, and encourage friends and family as well. We want to get as much input on this as we can. Then we'll take the commission comments and the public comment back to the Sustainability Advisory Commission, and there would likely be some small changes to the document, and from there it would go to Committee of the Whole and City Council.
Okay.
We have planned that out to be finished in this calendar year.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, great. And that link to the survey, if people want to fill it out, I know it was in the packet at the first part of this memo, so if people have input about any other parts of this plan or anything, feel free to write that up too. Okay.
Thanks for your
Thanks,
time.
Scott. Yeah. Okay, next up tonight is another plan. The Champaign County Greenways and Trails Plan is something that Jeff Engstrom has been working on. And there was an attachment in the packet to review about this as well. So Jeff, great, it looks like you've got some slides. Tell us first what we need to know, and then we'll hitch up with questions here.
All right. Unfortunately, no slides, but there are some exhibits
Okay.
that I'll share.
Yeah.
So this is a request for the city to adopt the Active Choices Greenways and Trails Plan as an amendment to our comprehensive plan. The Greenways and Trails Plan, it contains maps, goals, and project lists for development of off-street trails and greenways throughout the entire county. Also, one of the maps in our comprehensive plan from 2005 is actually originally from the 2004 Greenways and Trails Plan. So we would re-adopt that as the future Greenways and Trails map in our comprehensive plan going forward. So this is a county plan, which is considered an agency plan. In our comprehensive plan, we talk about a system of plans. For the city, the comprehensive plan kind of holds everything together and references all these other plans. Then the city, we ourselves do a lot of planning, both for areas in the city, like the downtown area, for different neighborhoods, Those are neighborhood plans. And then we have strategic plans, which are more policy documents. So the bicycle master plan would be considered a strategic plan. And then we have these agency plans, which are assembled by outside agencies, sometimes with the help of city staff or boards and commissions, sometimes without. So a university plan might be an agency plan. And this plan we're considering an agency plan. So it's generally a plan that may have some reflection on the growth and development of the areas around the city and in the city, but in general, it's not something that guides development for the city when we're doing projects or when we're talking to developers. So, for example, I mentioned the map in the Greenways and Trails plan, which is adopted in our comprehensive plan. We no longer use that map, actually. We now use the maps from the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan. So this plan was compiled by the RPC. It was guided by policy and technical committees with staff and other people from all kinds of jurisdictions throughout the county. So Urbana staff was involved in its compilation. It was about a 2-year process. The RPC held 4 public workshops, and people from the city were invited to all of those. The plan itself is a compilation of pre-existing plans and future projects and existing conditions for greenways and trails throughout the entire county. The greenways they define as corridors of open land managed for conservation or recreation. Trails are defined as either natural trails, which are a type of greenway, which can accommodate non-automobile transportation, or also bikeways, which could be on-street or off-street pathways specifically for bicycle travel. The plan itself has a lot of sections. It's 385 pages long. A lot of those pages are devoted to specifics of existing conditions throughout the entire county. But there are some more relevant things like the vision section. There's a detailed vision narrative of how active transportation will be safe and accessible to all users in 20 years from now. But really the purpose of the plan is to compile the active transportation projects and provide a guiding framework for future trail planning throughout the county. The plan also has literature review. It references several documents, including our comprehensive plan, which references this plan, so it's kind of circular. And it references our bicycle master plan, which we're working on the updates, the Boneyard Creek master plan, downtown plan, things like that. There are 7 key goals, which staff has really analyzed, and we feel are in harmony with the goals for various city plans. Don't want to go too much into those. And then there's the future conditions maps and projects lists. So we can get into those. So there are 4 maps for the city of Urbana, 4 quadrants of the city, that show both existing and future conditions for on-street and off-street trails and greenways. And let's get to those in a second. I just wanted to note first the 2014 Urbana Bicycle Master Plan, which we've been working on for quite some time now, and we'll be bringing to BPAC pretty soon, is going to supersede this plan in terms of what the city looks to for direction and policy for bicycle travel and pedestrian travel. The Greenways and Trails Plan, it does provide a wider overview and context for the entire county, so maybe for some areas outside of Urbana that are not covered by our plan. So that's something we want to pay particular attention to. But like I mentioned, our bicycle master plan is a more detailed study of the community's vision. It was specifically Urbana residents and people in Urbana who we targeted for input on our plan. And this was they cast a wider net. So how did we get here? A little bit of the process. The Active Choices Plan was actually put together mostly throughout 2013. They had the workshops, and then it was brought to Urbana Plan Commission and Urbana City Council for review and comments. But we failed to bring it to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission at that time. After their comment review period, RPC went ahead and submitted it to the state Illinois Department of Transportation. The state provided some comments to them, and then the state has actually accepted the plan that they've submitted. So what we're doing now is reviewing the plan basically to see how we're going to adopt it into our comprehensive plan. And then later on down the road, we will also be able to bring this to the Greenways and Trails Policy Committee and ask them to adopt any changes that we might ask for in their future amendments to this plan. So, yep. City Council has asked for us to bring it to the BPAC here for review, to just go through and make sure that the plan is consistent with our adopted plans and our ordinances. Really, the purpose of this review is not to update the maps and projects lists to reflect everything in the current draft of our 2014 master plan, because we're still working on that, and all those projects have not been officially adopted yet. Really, we just want to review it for consistency with our adopted plans, mainly our 2008 bicycle master plan, which we've reviewed, and that's pretty consistent. And any other things that might have come up, for example, on Broadway Avenue, we can zoom in here. On Broadway Avenue, south of, where are we? Okay. South of Illinois and north of Washington. This plan had designated that as a bicycle lane facilities. But City Council action after the adoption of our 2008 bicycle master plan, subsequent City Council action has led to that facility being redesignated as a shared use path. I'm sorry. Basically, let's see.
A bike route?
Bike route, that's it. Bike route. And then the priority being lowered from high priority. So at this time, we'd like to, hopefully you had a chance to look at the attachments that we sent out or look at the whole plan. We sent out the link to the plan. We didn't want to print out all 385 pages, but we did want to send out those attachments with the maps and the lists of projects in Urbana. Let me move this over to hide Champaign.
Okay.
And if you'd like to go through the map or the list of projects, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. And just a question before we open it up for other committee member questions and comments here, to make sure I understand. As you described, the new bike master plan we're working on now will supersede this. So am I hearing correctly? To some extent, it doesn't matter if we get some of the maps or locations right or not in this plan, because in just a few months, we're, at least for Urbana's purposes, going to stop looking at these maps and start looking at the new bike master plan maps. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Basically, this is just to bring it into our system of plans under our comprehensive plan to make it official. And yes, the bicycle master plan will supersede it.
Okay, okay. So, understanding that, I will open the floor for any comments, questions, input.
So Jeff, so this is kind of like a trailing plan. I mean, it kind of, after other plans are adopted, then those adopted plans come into this plan. But this doesn't actually get out in front like the bicycle master plan does and set.
Right.
I mean, it has goals, but were determined from other plans. Is that
Right,
correct?
yeah, that's a good description. It really compiles all the plans and wraps them up for the state, for IDOT to see what we're doing in the county, and hopefully it'll provide some incentive for them to provide funds to us for projects.
Okay.
Okay. Sue?
So maybe we should be really focusing on the stuff that isn't in Urbana and kind of how we connect with it, though, and so that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be an approach.
I mean, one question for you. I really liked the fact that there were some connections here that went outside of Urbana city limits that I hadn't noticed, and they might not even be on our own bike master plan. One just example was that sleighback route, which is a route through Edgewood, which is a neighborhood that's not incorporated into city limits, but having a connection through that neighborhood might be really nice, and to know that there's a route there that would have some signage or wayfinding or whatever. That sleighback route, as an example, are we ever going to include something like that in the Urbana Bike Master Plan and actually put it in our kind of forward vision for things that we hope would happen someday? Or because it is a route that partly goes outside city limits in an area that we'll never annex, is it the kind of thing that we never really expect to put in our Bike Master Plan and expect to implement?
What do you think, Craig?
I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, the current draft of the bicycle master plan does go beyond our corporate limits.
Okay.
And actually, the sleighback route is, I think, it might even be in the 2008, but it's definitely in the 2014 draft.
Okay. Okay.
But we do go beyond
Okay.
and look, a little bit more
For planning
holistically.
purposes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the issue would be, we couldn't necessarily go in there and sign anything because that's, township. But we could also, what it could do is help us to work with the township and ask them if, particularly if there's a connecting piece there, that we could say, well, it's just a few signs, and could you put those up?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. That totally helps and makes sense. Other comments and questions here?
This question might actually, so I did have a colleague come to me and say that their daughter was going into kindergarten and they never realized before problems getting their kindergarten to school. Have we taken a particular look at our school and making sure that, because I'm looking at these paths and some of them are really big, but sometimes the path just seems too far in making families go around the block to get to the light or stop sign to go back the other way down the block. I think we tempt children to cross in unsafe ways, and I don't know, maybe if we could, I guess the question is, how much have we looked at specifically our elementary schools and where these paths might not be so broad. They might actually be kind of skinnier because the broadness is what makes it dangerous. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sure.
I'm talking to a planner. You guys know this.
Sure. So we do, well, the RPC does, and we have RPC helps with safe routes to schools. We do have some schools with safe routes plans. So we do factor those in a little bit. I don't know if you want to speak a little more about that, Craig.
I think Jeff's correct. I mean, each school has its own safe routes to school plan that is online. A lot of it is pedestrian oriented, but that does pose a good question with regard to the bicycle master plan update, and that's something maybe we should ask RPC when they're here to present the draft, is looking at the bicycle system with respect to those safe routes to school and the elementary and middle schools, middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm. Sue?
What were some of the issues that she had?
The particular person I was talking about, they lived, I think, behind the school, and I don't know the geography of their area that well, but the way that they were describing it was that they lived closer than the walk that they had to take to get to the school. And he never noticed it until now.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to sit down with him on a map, and maybe we can map it out and send it out, and then we can take a better look at it from that parent's perspective.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so a lot of those are, the way that subdivisions were developed back then, where you've got to go, some long route when I can see it right there, but if I could just have a sidewalk that cuts through, but that's a good point.
well, and I just think kids don't always think about what's safest.
Mm-hmm.
I know personally, I have seen, especially this summer, look at my husband, because he's been in the car with several of these instances where kids on bikes diagonally crossing the highway, or not, what is this road here?
Cunningham.
Oh, yeah. No, the east-west University. Yeah, the big busy one. It's like 4 or 5 lanes if you count the turn lane, and I've seen them cross. Oh my God! And these, I mean, they look to me to be like, my age of students, 12 or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
They do whatever is easiest, and which is scary.
Yeah.
Because it's not safest. Maybe it goes back to pumping up what we're doing as far as educating our kids on what to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You can respond first, and then
I just
then
wanted to add a
Audrey,
little
too.
bit.
Go ahead.
This plan does have a little bit of the educational aspects of plans, of transportation planning, but you do find a lot more of that in our master plan. So,
Okay. Audrey?
Yeah, I just wanted to reference the side paths. Just tonight, I was biking south of town on Race Street, which has both a side path, multi-use path, and bike lanes. And I was in the bike lane, and I was really startled by a very small child, all decked out in his bicycling gear, clearly knew what he was doing. He took the lane on Race Street to make a left. And there were cars behind him, and these were people in a hurry to get out of town at 5 p.m. I was like completely flabbergasted. But the thing is you have a side path, and cars maybe expect all these kids, bikes, and especially kids. I mean, they yell at adult cyclists to get on the side path, much less a small child was in the lane and was taking the lane. And that child was doing doing everything right. And the real problem is when cars have a different expectation because they see that side path. They just don't think you should be. In fact, I've been buzzed in that lane, just abused in the lane for being there. Yeah. So it's just a question whether, I want to make sure that where we have a side path on this plan, that doesn't mean we won't have bike lanes as well, because actually bike lanes are what drivers should be expecting and will make the traffic more amenable for cyclists. Mm-hmm. Because, first of all, real cyclists, which this kid, who I would estimate was about 7 or 8, would be using the street. and not the side path.
One comment I had on the map is one that you've actually got on the screen right now. I mean, I was trying to look at this map visually and just compare places where I know plans have changed or the vision has changed over time. And one that really caught my eye was the route and the undetermined study area there on Florida Avenue, where the green dashed line, which would be a side path, kind of jogs behind the I think this is University of Illinois property there at the president's house. And the idea, at least when this map was created, the idea was, oh, well, let's put the path behind the house, even though I think in many, many subsequent conversations with folks at the university and elsewhere, it's been acknowledged that that idea just is not practical. That does not work. You can't, we're not going to put a path back there and ask people to go back there, and that's worse for safety and all kinds of reasons, and lighting and all sorts of things than trying to make a proper sidewalk out front on the street. And so I think this plan kind of has been nixed from a variety of stakeholders in the intervening years, but it still is a leftover on this map. Is this the kind of thing that we should question and correct now, or is this the kind of thing that's going to get corrected in the bike master plan? What do we know? Taking this location as one example about how to get it fixed.
Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that will be corrected in our bicycle master plan, but I think there's no harm in pointing that out, and when we adopt this into our comprehensive plan and going forward, we'll ask the Greenways and Trails Committee to adopt that change to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, though, I took the draft bicycle master plan that I have, the most current version, and I started comparing the maps. And I stopped real quick because there was quite a bit of change.
Okay.
So, that begs the question, and Jeff and I talked today about this quite a bit, is I think this is a document that is really actually obsolete already. And it would, I think it probably just gets adopted, and then with the bicycle master plan, when that comes out and we approve that, then there should be amendments then that come back to this and make changes from that. But I think we can point out a few things, but I will tell you, just when my cursory scan, there's a lot of things that are different.
Okay.
A lot of significant things that are different in the new master plan, which is going to be really, I know from staff's perspective, that's our guide that we go by too. So
then maybe if that's the case, here's a sort of process question. I mean, at the county, the folks who maintain greenways and trails, do they want to do updates on an ongoing basis and amendments as we continue to have them and generate them? Or do they prefer to just kind of keep this greenways and trails thing on the shelf until they're ready to do their huge kind of 5-year revision and then get it all in sync? I mean, in other words, say we finish our bike master plan in the next 6 months and send it off to city council here and pass it, and we have a new map. Do we at that point need to march right over to the Greenways and Trails steering committees and say, hey, here are all those differences. Let's get them corrected in your documents and things now? Or do we kind of just wait until they come back and say, you know what, we're ready to redo a whole Greenways and Trails update. It's been 5 years. What's the process so that we get our changes to them?
Well, it's, the county RPC staff is very busy.
Yeah.
They're short-staffed as well. So I think ideally they might like to keep these up to date, and Rita told me they will have annual meetings of their committee.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. What do you think, Craig? I think we should talk to them.
I'll give you my informed answer of I don't know.
Right. Yeah, so we can actually, we'll talk to Rita and Gabe
Okay.
and see.
But I think that's a good question, though. I mean, how does this get updated? And then who does reference this document, though? And you know, I guess that's the one question I want to know is
Yeah,
who uses it as their guide?
that's a good question. It's, I know it has a lot of the smaller cities and towns in the area,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure. I'm sure they would reference it if they were working on a bicycle or trail plan or trail infrastructure update. And it certainly helps to get grants if you can show it in a plan.
Right. It would almost seem that we would go ahead and go through the process of saying it's okay, and then, or council would, and then it would immediately after the other maybe plan gets adopted, then it at least gets revisited within that next year or so, or whenever funds allow. So,
Yeah, I guess if they have the staff capacity, it seems like it would be good as soon as we have a new bike master plan to get an amendment, you know, to get the Greenways and Trails folks to do an amendment to officially acknowledge everything that at that point we've put in our bike master plan. And if they don't have the capacity, or they have to say wait a while, they should tell us that. But ideally, it would be good for our plans to get immediately amended into theirs, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Roland.
Just a thought, with all the GIS technology that we have available to us currently, is there a way in the future to sort of make these updates seamless, that, you know, it's on the county GIS map and the city of Urbana pops in their new map and boom, you know, online anyway, it's updated.
Yeah, I've actually wondered, like, how RPC keeps all these plans separate. Do they just have one master file for the trails, and they only work off of that, and they incorporate things as they go, or do they have a separate set of shape files for each plan?
I don't know.
So, yeah,
Okay.
they do have a GIS layer that they've shared with Champaign County Bikes.
Okay, okay. So, any other comments and questions then on this version? I mean, I think the general, this isn't like a voting type item. Obviously, we're, you know, giving feedback to Jeff, and then he's going to take this back to City Council and for later action. But I think the sort of consensus here is we all recognize this might be out of alignment with our current and about to be upcoming bike master plan as well, and that the one way or another, I think we'd like to know that this plan would get updated, or know what the process is, so that things that end up in the bike master plan as the real leading document get acknowledged by these other agencies. Do people feel like that sort of sums it up? Are there any other comments and questions? Okay. Jeff, any?
I would just say,
Yeah.
if you do see any glaring things that you think we should correct, just email them to me, and we'll include those in our presentation to council in a few weeks.
Okay. Okay, great. Any final comments or questions on this? Okay. That was our last business item for the night. We have time, as always, for announcements. Are there any announcements of bike activity? Yeah, including public input announcements, things happening the next few months, things that need volunteers, or any of that? Jeff? Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead and take a seat and tell us your name and address officially for the
Yep.
record. And
Jeff Yockey, 304 West Washington Street in Urbana, also with Champaign County Bikes. So a lot of announcements. On Saturday, the Kickapoo Rail Trail Ride is happening. This is a ride that Champaign County Bikes and other groups are supporting to increase the awareness for the trail and raise some money. So we are super excited that that process is underway to raise money to start the construction on the first leg between Urbana and St. Joe. So that's exciting. Safe Routes to School has a bike rodeo that's at the Market at the Square on the 27th, Saturday morning. And so if you know any little kids or families, that'll be happening just across Illinois Street from the market, and there'll be helmet fitting and all the usual fun and games over there. On October 15th, Champaign County Bikes will be partnering with the U of I to do another all-campus bike census. It's a lot of fun. We get about 40 people, and we divide the whole campus into quadrants, and we go out and count bikes on a Wednesday morning between 10 and 11 o'clock while people are in campus. And we've got some infographics out on that. This will be our third one. So we did one last fall in October, and then one in the spring. So documenting what's going on. Our numbers are around 6,000 bikes on campus. There are not that many bike racks on campus. And of course you need bike racks for where the residence halls are, and bike racks at the classrooms and ARC, and so you really need a lot of them. So we're providing that kind of data so the university can use that in funding requests and their planning. So anybody wants to help with that, it's a lot of fun, and we'll give you a map and pair you up with some folks, and you just,
Cool.
I mean, it's one of the censuses are fun. You just see things you never see before when you're out there actually looking. And
I have a question, Jeff.
a question,
Here.
go ahead. Yeah.
Here. So can kids sign up for that?
students?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Do you have any information that like we could pass out? at the
Not with me,
school, or-
but they can
okay.
contact me.
And it's
and-
this, okay.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have. we put it out on several different formats, looking for volunteers, and so university employees and graduate students, international students who are looking for something to do, show up, and it's just a hoot to spend some time with them.
Okay, great. And the
Uh,
contact info for people who are interested in that is what?
Info at champaigncountybikes.org.
Okay,
And
great.
that'll get to me.
Great.
This is our 2004 Champaign County Bikes local bike map, and the 2015 map is at the printer right now, and we should see them by Friday. And then this is another second printing. Be about 20,000 maps to go around, and we are excited. Charlie Smythe has put a lot of work into that, and we did a huge amount of work a year ago to create the whole new format, and this is really a great piece of work. And then just 1 year, wow! So we're excited by all the things going on. So that's coming
Can I
out.
say some success story to that? I have seen kids carry that with them and keep it to the point where it's like, it's been used so much. It's like, I don't know, like a Shakespeare book would be for a lit student. Like
Yeah.
it's just obviously well read. And it's funny to see them pull it out even in like class. We'll be talking about something and they're like, actually,
Sure.
it out. So it's really kind of exciting to see how, for kids, that they really found that information very useful.
Yes, and
I have 120 students, so if you give me, actually, maybe about 8 to 10 times that, I can make sure that we have it at the school for every student.
we can do it. Along with it being one of the best local area maps to see what's going on, it's just loaded with educational stuff. And because you guys are all parts of different groups and organizations, if you're looking for somebody to speak at the Rotary Club, to a school program, I did a safety thing for some organization behind the driver's motor vehicle place. It was just, didn't know this place existed, and they always have sort of a safety minute. Anyway, it went about 20 minutes by the time they stopped asking questions. So anyway, we'd be glad to speak, and on safety, on bike routes, any of that kind of stuff. In the big thank you category, I am loving Busey Avenue, Broadway, and Washington Street, so thanks for smoothing those places out. Those are wonderful. And excited to see all the bike infrastructure on those. We're also thrilled by the Tiger Grant that was awarded to the U of I and Urbana, and the work that that's ultimately going to mean on Green Street and Wright. So we're excited by that and glad to help in reviewing the designs and putting more eyeballs on plans and helping any way we can. And last, excited that the City of Urbana completed League of American Bicyclists bike-friendly community application. I know that was huge, and everybody had a little part in that. I saw it go out the door, and I've already seen some activity circling around as they begin their evaluation process on it. So, good job, everybody that put some time and energy on that. Really, it's not trying to make us look good. It's just documenting all the things we do, and that is just a long list, and it's pretty exciting to see where we've come in 4 years. So,
Yeah.
thanks, Brandon, for getting us started on that several years ago, I think. And
Yeah.
it's been really good to have that going on. So, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Any other announcements? Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Kevin Garcia. I'm a city planner obviously with the city of Urbana, and I've been appointed, I guess, to be the CD department representative at BPAC. So I guess maybe I should have been sitting up here the whole time. But I did have one announcement. I took part in the Light the Night event, which I'm not sure how many years it's been running, at least for a few years. So we gave out on the campus at 3 locations. We gave out, I think, over 700 front and rear lights and installed them on students and actually anybody who showed up on their bikes. So that was last week. It was excellent.
Excellent, thanks. Great. Any other announcements? Okay.
Do we want to discuss the next meeting, the schedule for that? I mean, I think we can go ahead and announce that, our plan here with the review of the long-range transportation plan. and
Yeah,
what-
there's a special meeting, and gosh, if I remember right, is
It's
it the 30th?
30th of October,
Hmm.
and it's a joint meeting with BPAC, Plan Commission, and SAC to review the long-range transportation plan.
Yeah.
And then we had planned to cancel our standing BPAC meeting that month.
So the October meeting, our normal October meeting, we would cancel and not have, but this special meeting would be on a Thursday, which I know is unusual. So I know for some people Thursday may be hard to attend, but please try if you can and plan ahead for Thursday, October 30th,
Right.
because it'll be a big joint meeting here and an important one.
Right. And then tentatively, the bicycle master plan draft is to come to BPAC in the November meeting.
Okay, great. And
At
that would
this
be
time.
the normal third Tuesday or
Yes.
whatever in
Yes.
November. Okay, excellent, which I think is the 18th of
Yes, you're correct.
November. Okay, excellent. Any other announcements? Future topics? Okay, I think we're adjourned then for tonight. Thank you all very much. Good evening.